Hey, welcome to Lab the Podcast. I'm so grateful to be here with esteemed platinum recording artist and Grammy Award winning songwriter, producer, and worship leader, Brooke Ligertwood. Brooke's passion for art and theology are an incredible gift to so many, including myself and my family. She's served the church globally through her long established tenure of writing congregational anthems, while also maintaining a mainstream career for over 2 decades under her maiden name, Brooke Fraser. A prolific songwriter, Brooke has penned a growing anthology of beloved church anthems like What a Beautiful Name, King of Kings, 1,000 Hallelujahs, and Hosanna, as well as devotional favorites like New Wine, None But Jesus, and many more. Her songs have been streamed globally more than 1.5 billion times, translated into 15 languages, and have topped charts with number ones and several top 25s. Brooke and her husband Scott have 2 young daughters. And Brooke, you are hours away from the release of this brand new album. So thanks for making time to hang out with us. It's great.
So thrilled. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So 8 on Spotify. I was just looking because you have the pre-order, pre-save, and it's 10 hours, 54 minutes as we're talking till the release of this album. Is there an emotion that's particular that you're feeling right now ahead of this release?
Yeah. Um, well, my body feels the emotion of nausea. My my heart probably feels, I don't know, this is an interesting one for me. I've been releasing music for a long time, but I was with um, some people last night, and one of my friends who's kind of a business guy, not in the arts, kind of has been in ministry for long, but not a nuts and bolts kind of understanding of music. And he was like, how are you feeling? The album's coming out. You must be so excited. And I think he was a little taken aback. And I was like, do you really want to ask me this in this dinner right now with this big group of people? And he's like, yeah, I do. And I said, to be honest with you, I'm feeling I have been taken aback by the unexpected waves of grief, which is not the kind of thing you probably expect me to say. But this album, the process of this album, I was with my friend Jason last night as well, who he and I produced the album together, and so obviously he's familiar with all that the processes carry. But he said, yeah, he goes, a lot of these songs, Brooke, all of the songs are loaded with loss in some way. So that's been a really interesting experience. For me, at times I've questioned whether I should kind of delay this until I'm more together, until I'm through to the other side. And so it's a really interesting point to release music when you're still in the middle. But I think that that's probably also maybe truest to the office of the artist, is to hopefully serve and contribute something of beauty to the world, that comes from a place where we're aware of all of the facets of our humanity. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's well said. I mean, the reality of the moment that we're in too, we can't predict when things are going to come out, and just the world is complex and tumultuous anyway, globally. And here we are in a moment where all of us are trying to find words and give voice to different feelings, especially around our faith, where we're saying, God, what about, and where are we? And is there a desert? And your ability to give voice to those things, that is the artist's gift, to help all of us kind of put language and emotion to things that we can't put words to, and you help us do it. So that makes sense. And especially, you've released other projects at this scale before. That's not new, but this particular album has its own identity. And I was reading a little bit about the album, and you talk about it as an unfolding listening experience. I wondered if you could just say a little bit more about that, because that struck me as particular, that there was a way that you approached 8 that maybe was different from 7, and that unfolding perspective.
I think 7 being a live recording, we really just presented it, and that collection came out as if you were in a worship night. So we literally just put the tracks in the order of the way that we led them on the night of worship. But with 7, it being a studio album, I still wanted to be really deliberate about it, not feeling like it was created in a clinical environment, which I think sometimes I listen to studio albums and I'm kind of feeling like I'm missing the humanity. Um, so I really try and make sure there's human sounds still in them, the sounds of people shuffling around, the sounds of intercession. And so even though this is a studio album, it's really created to be something that you can put on, whether in your car or going for a walk or just kind of in your home. And of course, people will pick and choose tracks. That's great. But if you want to have an experience, it is also kind of formatted in such a way that in particular points in the listening experience, I've inserted kind of these longer, probably too long instrumentals, because I want there to also be space for response and hopefully a reminder to people that I'm not there to entertain people, but I am here to serve you, hopefully in an experience that through your own faith and prayer and your own worship offered up can be an encounter with Jesus, because otherwise there's kind of no point for me. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. Your team sent a link so that I was able to listen to the entire album all the way through in an unbroken way like that. And it does unfold and allow you to immerse yourself in the movement of the piece. It kind of moves like that symphony that just takes you through this swell and that valley and back up and through the deserts and places. And it was really, it evoked a whole range of emotions. There was no point that I felt like the weight, the heavy weight that sometimes I felt was too much. There were times where it lifted at just the right moment, and you felt like there was somebody with you. You used the word serving, but like a guide alongside. So it was really a beautiful experience. Did you, was some of this written kind of commingled with Seven, or did Seven completely rest? And then you said, no, let me reimagine what I want to do next. And then eight emerged, or was it kind of a more blended process?
Yeah, no, it was definitely quite segmented for me. Seven was going to be one and done. I never anticipated that there was more beyond that when we made it, and really that was made in response to I basically felt the Lord told me very unequivocally to do that, and it confused me at the time because I didn't understand the purpose. But I did it anyway. I didn't understand why. I knew that doing Seven would, for various reasons, um, make life a little complex. And I was already really happy with what I was doing. But then the Lord said, do Seven, and we did it. But it was, it's really amazing the way that the Lord leads. A month after Seven came out, our personal world, at least in our family, really started to have some huge tectonic shifts, and so a lot of sadness and grief with that, but also in that seeing the utter kindness of God. And then I named that album Seven because of Revelation 1. It had nothing to do with me kind of picking a random number. It was really anchored in what I felt like the Lord was stirring in me and asking me to do at that time, because of Revelation 1 and that Jesus standing in the middle of the seven lampstands, which are the seven churches. And then kind of once we kind of had seen Seven through a little bit and it had been out for a little while, kind of it became apparent to me that I probably needed to do more. And so then that's how kind of eight began. And really, it's been a relatively quick process in some ways. And but it's a crazy feeling to have it this imminent. But I also think it's going to be quite a healing thing to release it at this time, hopefully.
Yeah, no, I think so. And I just am grateful for the obedience side of that, to say, I hear this and I think God, I believe I have conviction that God's calling me to write or to share a new piece of art in this way, and all of the things that come from that. But then to have, like, from our experience on the listening side of that, the gift side of that, I've shared some of those songs with people who have lost children, who have been through unimaginable difficulty, and the particular yes that you gave, right? And then the allowing God to work through you travels across the world to this particular person in their particular moment. That's extraordinary to me. And I mean, it's the most wonderful gift of God, but also art and art's capacity to give us something and to allow God to work in a way that's just extraordinary. Are there, for you as a person and as an artist, I'm curious if you can trace back to like your young years, childhood, early adolescence, and are you able to make sense of it now? Because I know probably now, sitting at your kitchen table, you got daughters and a husband, you go, what is happening? Right? Like, here I am in this place and that place and traveling here and traveling there and writing and feeling called by God to do art in a particular way. And then can you look back at your story and go, no, it was there. Like, I could go back today and see a 9, 12-year-old Brooke. God was already pulling me in that direction. Is it that evident, or are you going, God, how did you do this?
I think the answer is both. I, I started writing songs before I ever met Christ, and so it's amazing the way that that God wires each of us individually and gives us the scripture says that the gift and the call of God are irrevocable. So so Paul McCartney's songwriting gift is from God. That is the gift of God. So we each are given these gifts, and they find they step into full purpose when they're connected to the redemptive heart of God. But in my experience, it was also the gifts that God had given me, whether I had ever met him or not, that became almost breadcrumbs on the path that led me to him. Because as a 12-year-old, when I started writing songs, I was able to explore some of these questions that I had as a 12-year-old girl about purpose and about and all of these things. And it wasn't like I had peers who were interested in talking about the same things, or even a family dynamic that could host those kinds of conversations. And so songwriting for me became the way that I could have a conversation about these questions I had. And I feel like what that did was help me to articulate the need I had for God without ever having necessarily the language to put it that way. And so when I then a few years later met Jesus, I was like, oh, all of these things and these questions that I've had that I've been able to explore in songwriting, here I find the answer in a person. And so kind of then beginning to walk that out has been beautiful. So there's that part of that, and then the other side of that answer, that not the being able, both the being able to trace the story that was being written all along, and also the utter surprise and astonishment and wonder is, next week it's going to be 20 years since the release of my first record. And so God bless my Sony family. I did all my Brooke Fraser records through Sony. They have been digging through the archives and sending me all kinds of absolutely crazy videos of, those early years of me as a teenager, performing these songs that I'd written in my bedroom, and they are just horrible. I can't even tell you. I've watched these videos, and we'll probably post some snippets of them, just in like bite-sized pieces, because it is so humiliating and humbling. And the best way to go, how did I ever get to do this with my life? Because if I had seen these videos, if I had been, I'm astonished that that God has gifted me with the ability to be able to spend my life making art, because gosh, I was crap. I'm going to tell you.
That's
God is
great. That's great. I think I heard Ed Sheeran say something very similar, like an encouragement to young artists, saying like, listen, if you listen to what I was trying to do when I started, you would be amazed that I get to do this for a job. So I love that. I was reading a book with our team that was talking about Michelangelo. And if you walk through up to to see the David statue, you pass by a lot of his early work, and you see the development of an artist that eventually puts on display this incredible, magnificent piece that transforms so many people's lives. And you wonder, like, at any point had they quit, right? What God was already doing in them, would that have not been shared? And I said it earlier that I think, and I want to pull on this thread and hear your thoughts on this, because I think your gift is other And here's what I mean by that. And you alluded to it, that I'm not here to entertain you necessarily, although I'm an artist and my art serves people in different ways. But there's a particular thing that is true, I think, for me when I heard King of Kings, that it's something other. And it's like great religious art, like the David, like Caravaggio's work, like Michelangelo's other work, or you see these pieces that help you see through something to the transcendent, and it opens you up like that. And not everybody can do that. There's a lot of wonderful artists singing really meaningful things and really meaningful things about faith, but yours is in that sphere of other, and seems to be that for so many of us, where you're able to give voice, and in a corporate sense give voice to the heart of the church, and put on display really deep rooted theological themes of the Christian faith, but do it poetically and beautifully. How have you made sense of that tension as an artist who has this 20-year body of work that's art? It's you producing art that's from your imagination and passion and gifting and the moment that you're in. And then there's this other aspect that I feel like has to be a weight a bit to steward. How have you, is there a tension there, and how do you navigate that?
Well, first of all, I don't know that I am deserving of that, but I certainly thank you so much for the encouragement. And you speak of the other, and I think that is, I think it's in First Peter. It talks about there's a phrase that he uses, and he talks about the administration of this mystery, and I feel like that is what song and art can do, is administrate, which means to bring order around mystery and translate it in some way. And I know, because I, as you have been the recipient of experiencing this mystery, articulated through beauty, that given to us by so many artists and authors and people who are gifted by God to be able to administrate mystery. And so there is, I think, the elements of trying to steward what you've been given well, and become more skilled at the administration. I think, you talked about Michelangelo before, but I love that quote of his, which I don't know if it's actually his, who knows, at this point, but he said, apparently he said, I saw the angel in the marble and I carved until I set him free. And so that whole idea that that the mystery, that the other is always present in the marble, but as artists we can grow in our skill at being able to chisel out just enough so that the mystery that has always existed can be seen in its truest form. And I think that is something that can develop over time, walking past, Michelangelo's early works to finally seeing the David, that those angels, so to speak, in the marble were always there, but he was able to grow in his skill until you can gaze upon a work that feels like it's something that has always been there, and as hopefully as true as possible a representation of the reality that it exists to communicate.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's beautiful in the complexity of, I'm sure, and to be able to put a brush or a song or something that has the complexity of all of like the spiritual battle around the resurrection or something, but then also to like paint a flower, right? And to do both, like the ability to write a song that speaks to your kids or gives voice to my life as a mom or a person. And then
Yeah.
also to turn your gift to say thousands of people in the church will, hundreds of years later, like your name will be a hymn writer for 100 years from now when we're singing these hymns like King of Kings. That's 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 just a wild complexity to me. And I wonder, Francis Schaeffer wrote a book called Art and the Bible, and he said good art has to be theologically excellent, or it has to be artistically excellent and theologically significant. Those are the two things that he kind of said. I want my good art to speak to both of those. And I think yours does. It has the deep rooted theological significance and also gets to that level of beauty that we're talking about. Who are the voices that kind of help you steward both of those really well, that you draw from to anchor that theological significance, and then the people who push you to keep thinking artistically and to keep pushing?
I think I am I'm influenced by a lot of people who are not physically alive anymore. you know, and really for me, a lot of my art has been inspired by books more than necessarily other music or other art. So I could trace so many of origins of songs that I've written to books that I've written that have impacted me. The Great Divorce by C.S. Lewis. Like even I once wrote a song after I read Patti Smith's autobiography, Just Kids. So there's so much that inspired that. But really, I think my art is so shaped by the word, because I think it's the word has so shaped me, I hope. But I came to faith alone in my bedroom as a 15-year-old girl with the Bible. And so from the very literally the moment of kind of the genesis of my walking with Christ, the word has been, I'm so sorry, I don't know how to turn off those notifications. The word has intrinsically shaped my understanding and navigating of the world. And so therefore it deeply informs all the art that I make, both the songs of worship, but also then the other art that I make for people outside the four walls of the church. And I think that's why, they talk about, preachers who always encourage each other not to read the word just to write a sermon. And I would say it would be the same for absolutely for anybody who writes a song that a congregation might use. It's not about I don't want to read a passage with the end goal of figuring out how I can put this in a song, but simply by being a person who's ingesting and soaking in the scripture, because the word never returns void. At some point, all of that has been kind of seeded in you will at some point bud and flourish and kind of make its way into the art that we create, which is just wild. It's amazing to me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, it's amazing to think of your 15-year-old self beginning to absorb that living word, and it starts to have a life in you and mature. And that takes all of these years to the point that what comes out today is drawing from that in a beautiful living way. I love that. So I know we're going to run out of time. I want to respect your time, but we have to get to actually talk about 8, which is on, it's probably the counter is now saying we're a half hour closer to it than we were before. But is there, I know for you, there's probably a particular moment or maybe a couple in the album where you made a specific choice to include something or to prune something. And I'm wondering if you can give us a hint of one of those that we can listen for as it comes out, that we can go, you know what, I heard her talk about that choice that she made artistically or lyrically. Is there something that you're really excited to share that hey, that was a particular choice I made?
Gosh, there's so many that come to mind, and there's so much fun. One of the things that I love about particularly about getting to write and create and produce sounds attached to songs of worship is that I just love the worship being all through it and all of through the stories of the things, not just the thing that you hear at the end, but all through the process. And so what you're hearing is not just a song of worship, but you're hearing moments and stories in the lives of people who have played these sounds that are worship themselves. So there's a song, it's actually, I would describe it as more of a moment, called Like Incense on the record. And Like Incense is a collection of verses that I then matched with the very gracious permission many years ago of Rich Mullins' estate with his chorus from sometimes his song Sometimes by Step. So the title is Like Incense / Sometimes by Step. And Rich Mullins has had a huge influence on me, and one of the things that I attach to him and his legacy and the nature of the prophetic life he lived is the sound of the hammer dulcimer. So I knew that I wanted to have the hammer dulcimer on this song as a little nod to Rich and the origins of these songs. Well, I said to Jason, I was like, do you know anybody that plays the hammer dulcimer who we can have come and play on this song? And he says, I know the guy. And so this gentleman called Gabe Scott turns up to Jason's house one day to play the hammer dulcimer on this song. It turns out he started playing the hammer dulcimer because of Rich Mullins, and I think was actually taught by the one of the key guys that played the hammer dulcimer in Rich's band. So that's already a story, an amazing moment in itself. But one of the incredible things about Gabe's story, and I share this story, I specifically asked him and his wife for permission to be able to share this, but Gabe a few years ago almost lost, has been a musician all his life. A few years ago, got sick and the virus traveled to his brain, and he ended up almost losing his life to encephalitis, was in a coma in the hospital, and when he woke up from that coma had completely lost the memory of the previous 4 years of his life, couldn't remember the birth of his daughter or the early years of his, and still can't. So, but one of the things that Gabe could still remember how to do was to play the dulcimer. And so here we are, just a couple of years into this really heartbreaking journey of him learning how to live again with this loss of these significant years of his life, this whole season of him becoming a father that is gone from his memory, and trying to reconcile all of that with this God that he loves, who he's walked with. And then his wife, I ran into her the other night, and she told me that the session that he did with us when he played was one of his first times back trying to play music for recording. And he was really nervous. He didn't know if he could do it, or if he would be able to remember the songs that, and so getting to sit in that room while this gentleman walking through this season of having survived but still reconciling this brokenness, and then getting to play with this part of his brain that could still remember this person that he was. Just even the worship and the weight and that sound alone is heavy. I'm going to tell you one more and we're going to move on, but I get a bit excited.
I
And then one of
love this.
things I also wanted to do in that song, because it's a song about prayer and about intercession, is you won't be able to hear it unless you listen for it, but I wanted to include the sounds of intercession in that instrumental as Gabe is playing. And so I asked a few really specific people just to send me recordings of them praying. So there's Priscilla Shira, who's a Bible teacher, who I absolutely love and adore. But then there's also just my friend's mum, who doesn't speak English. Her and her husband came to the US as illegal immigrants, I believe, and are pastors of a tiny Spanish church in Arizona, but she's a woman of faith, a woman of prayer, a prophetic woman. And so I asked her if she would just pray in Spanish for the church and the history. She's an older Spanish woman in her 60s. No one will ever know her name, but just so we have this established, renowned Bible teacher, but then also this incredible, faithful woman who just prays and has prayed for her whole life, and then also some children. So I asked my own daughter, who was 5 at the time, who I believe actually has a gift of prayer. When she prays, it's not like any 5-year-old pray that I've ever heard. And her, having walked through this past season of her life, losing her grandma, we moved across the other side of the world really suddenly because my mother-in-law got really sick. And so my 5-year-old praying, and I said, you can pray whatever you want. And she just started praying in her little husky 5-year-old voice with a lisp, praying and thanking God that he is the God that has defeated death. And so I didn't want to make those overt or cliche moments. So they're tucked in there. They're not necessarily audible, but just the idea that this moment is loaded with real worship and real intercession, that belies the thing that you can actually hear. Yeah.
Mm. I'm so grateful for that right there. Thank you for taking the time to share that. As I said, like artists, there's so many different artists that are so talented. And then there's that occasional person you meet that you say, there's something other. And even just the choices, like with visual artists like Mako Fujimura, who uses particular elements in the visual art, and you wouldn't necessarily know it unless you get to do this kind of a conversation and hear like, no, the reason you feel and experience and God works in some particular way is because of the thought and intention to say, I'm going to include this voice and this voice and this voice, and most of us won't even hear it, but
Yeah.
it's part of the palette that's there. That thank you, what a treasure to get to hear that, and we're going to listen for it in now 7 hours and 45 minutes or whatever it is. So good. Well, you are a gift to so many of us, and it really is. I think there's so many songs. King of Kings, again, for me in the story that we're living as a family. But thank you. And I think there's so many of us who go, oh, thanks for taking the time so that we can have kind of a human conversation with somebody who is a part of our life in and through their art. And there's that natural instinct to say, well, we're in your debt and we want to offer something back. And so obviously, like, download the album, pre-save the album, share the album, there's all of that. But as a mom of that little voice that's praying and a husband who's helping shepherd all this life that's happening, how could we kind of love you back and contribute back? Because there's so many people I think who are like, no, there's been an impact from that other quality of her art, beyond just sharing. Is it just to pray, and is there a particular way, or just to cheer you on? Like, what matters for you as an artist and as a person?
Thank you for asking that. I would say two things come to mind. The first is, yeah, please pray for me if you think of me. I I know that I am sustained by prayer. And even last night I said, I I I know what the Lord is asking of me, but I almost feel like a preemptive weariness. Sometimes it's hard to, you know, that you do it, but we I really need prayer to sustain me and my family for what we feel the Lord is calling us to. So prayer would just mean the world, even if it's like 10 seconds. And the second thing was, I would just be to ask um, anybody listening to be faithful with your own calling. I look at my little girls and I'm so aware of the church that they are going to be part of in 10, 15, 20 years. And so it may seem insignificant, but maybe there's someone listening today who is the mother or the father of a kid who seems kind of difficult right now, but has some crazy leadership on their lives, or some gift that needs contending for, because maybe 10, 15, 20 years from now, they're going to be a significant minister in the church that my kids might be blessed by their ministry. It's not even, for me at this point, it's not even about us. It's about these generations coming through. And so I would just ask anyone listening, and I would encourage you, and I would thank you in advance for being faithful with what God's put in your hand, because I will, in the eternal scheme of things, be blessed by your obedience, because your obedience will have a ripple effect that will touch even my children. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I share that with you. So, Brooke, thank you so much. The album is 8 and it's coming out in just a few short hours. You can find it on all the platforms. Please, everybody who's listening, take a listen. And I really do encourage you to listen in that unfolding way and give yourself space. One of the gifts that's given through great art is for us to slow down and to not necessarily just pick and choose, but to just let the art unfold and have its work, because God is working through it. So, Brooke, thanks for your artistry. Thanks for the humility and the time and just what you've given in so many ways. And we will take you up on that and be praying for you. But this album's a treasure, particularly. I was moved by it, and we're just really thankful for you. So thanks for the time.
Thank you so much.